Hello, welcome back to the Daily Word. My name is Dale. I'm one of the pastors here at Redeemer Bible Church, and we are starting a new chapter today in the book of Matthew. We're in Matthew 19. We're going to pick it up in verse 3. I know you're going to do the full reading of the passage, but I want to start in verse 3 because once again we have the Pharisees trying to entrap Jesus. This is a cycle now that has played itself out through the book of Matthew. And here again, you have the religious order of the day, the leaders of the day, trying to really ensnare Jesus against the culture and the laws of Israel, and then what their interpretation of what the scriptures were saying about how to live. So Jesus obviously is able to answer them here in Matthew 19, just like he has in the previous passages, with truth and with illumination of actually the context of God's law and the Mosaic law and creation, and he brings everything together here in Matthew 19. So let's pick it up in verse 3, and I will read a few passages and we'll stop and talk about it, and we'll go through verse 15 today. And then tomorrow we'll pick up and finish the rest of the chapter. So join me, drop your eyes down to Matthew 19, verse 3. He says, And the Pharisees came up to him and tested him. Here we go. Tested him. Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? Now, divorce, much like today, was a hot-button issue. You had religious leaders in that day who were teaching that a man could divorce his wife for any reason whatsoever, and they went to the Mosaic law on that based on some misinterpretation of the book, or the writings, I should say, of Moses. So let me start that again. And the Pharisees came to him and tested him by asking, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?" He answered them, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife.'" That holding fast, you stay together. "And the two shall become one flesh," meaning there's now, in God's eyes, there's not a distinction. You're one flesh. There's not a distinction between you. You're one because of the marital covenant. So Jesus is going back to the Garden of Eden and talking about the spirit of how God created things, and what God's original intent was for a man and a woman to hold fast to each other for their entire lives, and that he saw them as one when that happened. So Jesus now is going again to the creation account and challenging the Pharisees in their misunderstanding of even asking the question. They come back at him in verse 7, and they say, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away?" And Jesus responded, he said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so." So Jesus again is saying, listen, the order of creation, God's original intent, supersedes Moses's certificates. So he's pointing them back to creation here. Verse 8. No, it is verse 9. Forgive me. "And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife," and now Jesus makes an allowance here, "except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery." So sexual immorality in this context is fornication. It's a sexual union with another human being. It's adultery. That's what it is. So the disciples answered him in verse 10, and they say, "If such is the case of a man with his wife, is it better not to marry?" But he said to them, "Not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given." Meaning, if you're called into singleness, you're called into singleness. If you're not, marriage is proper. Verse 12, "For there are eunuchs who have been who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men. And there are eunuchs who have been made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive this receive it. Verse 13. Then children were brought to him, and that he might lay his hands on them and pray. And the disciples rebuked the people. But Jesus said, let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. So once again, we have Jesus drawing the simplicity of faith, pointing to children in their simplicity and their willingness to come to him, and connecting it to what that's like for the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them, and then they went away. So you have the religious leaders of the day who think that they're cunning, who think that they're going to fool and trap Jesus, to get him really to take a position against the modern day rabbis who are saying you can divorce for any reason, because they were trying to divide Jesus from the people who were following him. Because people have opinions, and if you hear Jesus saying you shouldn't divorce, perhaps you can divide some people away from him, and they'll return back to the teachers of the day instead of listening to Jesus. So Jesus, being obviously the God-man, knew what they were up to, and goes back to the order of creation. It says, no, from the beginning, this was the intent of marriage. And just because Moses made an allowance, realize that was not a good thing. That was because you had hard hearts. That the people of Israel had hard hearts. So that's why Moses allowed that to happen. And then he draws them back to the reality that it's God's creation that goes first. So I hope that's helpful. Obviously, marriage and divorce is a hot button topic in our culture too. The people in the church are not immune to it. So the scriptures, though, thankfully, do give us a very clear understanding of what the allowances are for divorce. And in this context, it is adultery, and God will make an exception for that. But if you divorce, according to the text, if you divorce somebody for other reasons, you and remarry, you are in the danger, or you will be committing adultery with that other person. So very, very hard topic, because there are many people in the church, many people in our culture who when they read this, they panic and they worry that somehow they are in sin that's unforgivable, that what they've done in the past has led them to a place now that is wrong. But pastorally, what I want to remind you of is that the gospel covers the sin of men, especially if you did some things in the past that you weren't aware of what the scriptures say, and maybe you weren't even a believer at that time. Just know that the gospel of Jesus Christ covers all sin, and God's grace is bigger than our ability to sin. So just remember that. If you have any questions, obviously we're here as a team to talk to you and work through some of that. But just know that according to the scriptures, the reason for a divorce in this context in Matthew 19 is for adultery. Now there are a couple other reasons that are in the scriptures. One would be for abandonment. I hold to that position, that if your spouse abandons you, this is a 1 Corinthians passage, that you are able to divorce them, and your oath will be held against you no more. Why? Because they're non-believers. And then the third one, obviously, is death. If somebody dies in a marriage, and you're still here and you want to remarry somebody else, you biblically can do that. So that's the word for the day. Obviously, a very hot topic, a very difficult topic for some of us who have lived long lives and maybe have had multiple marriages, and it's kind of hard to process through. But again, here at Redeemer, if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out. we are here to help you walk through some of those issues. So God bless you, and we'll be back tomorrow to finish up the rest of chapter 19. Have a great day.